Hi, greetings, Lighthouse Living Room. This is your host, Pastor Mark, here at the Lighthouse. Tonight, on a Wednesday, I hope everyone is safe and doing well. I have quite a quandary in regards to how I'm going to take the next few hours or few times that we get together and speak about them. And tonight's going to be a little different in the fact that I'm going to do more of a teaching and not more of a discussion about certain items and things, but it all has to do with personal growth. It has everything to do with how we see ourselves and how we interact in the world. But here's the deal. I found something out this week that was extraordinary. And I can only say extraordinary in the fact that I only remember one other time in my life that I had an encounter like this. And you guys are going to this will blow your mind. All I can say is it's going to blow your mind. Now, why is the first encounter that I'm going to tell you about, the example, happens to me all the time. I mean, probably not a month goes by that I don't have it happen at least once or twice. The second encounter I haven't had happen in over 40 years. And so I am going to share something with you personally that I think is very relevant to what we're talking about. I was going to start a study on confronting the giants of your life. And it's talking about areas of our lives that hinder us from growth. And I started to dive back into that. It's a study I've done in the past, and I looked at it, and it just didn't fit. And so I started reading and looking at another study this study's probably, I'm guessing, 20 years old, maybe longer, but it really fit. And the reason why it really fit was because it was speaking to me from another viewpoint. What has happened in the last couple of years with Rabbi Kyle coming on board and dealing with Torah theology and Torah understanding has made me understand how valuable the ancient paths are. Now, what do I mean about ancient paths? Well, something came to me that I thought that was really extraordinary, and this is what it was. He said, there is nothing new under the sun. Okay? We're talking out of Proverbs. What does that mean? Nothing new under the sun. In other words, things that have already been done, tested, and tried that work are in Scripture. Now, I'm going to blow your mind, and you're going to say, oh no, I want whatever is new and what's fashionable and the fad. Well, I got news for you. Most of those things are blown up in people's faces. And I have been closing the ministry time here at the Lighthouse for the last, maybe a year, with something that goes like this. He says, may the Lord blessing be upon you, may his light shine upon you, and everywhere you go, every business you walk into, every place that you go, pray a blessing upon it. And when you leave your blessing there. Okay, are you so far get kind of where I'm going? All right, so saying all of that, I'm going to give you these two examples that happened to me this week. I think it was Monday or Tuesday. I think it was Monday. No, it was Tuesday, and the reason why it was yesterday. This is why it was so weird. I've had a lot of weird things happen in my life that I cannot explain, and I cannot possibly wrap my head around. But this is what happened yesterday at 11 o'clock in the morning. I was at Lowe's, and I was doing what I usually do. I think it's my second place of residence is Lowe's. I think I hit that place at least 3 times a day, if not 4. And everybody in the place knows me, and I know them. I know them by first name. Everybody that works on the pro side or whatever. And there was a young lady, and I'll use her real name. Her name was Raylene, Spanish gal. And I caught her one day about 3 or 4 weeks ago. They have an ice, they sell bags of ice there. for the guys in the pro side, so that if you've got a cooler, you buy a bag of ice or in your cooler to take your drinks and stuff. And I watched her go to the cash register that's right next to the ice machine. And what was funny was I caught her taking her water out and taking her water and setting it inside of the cabinet that had the thing. And she got eye contact with me, and when she did, I did this, and she did this, and I said, no problem. And so that's been an ongoing thing with me and her, in which I haven't now. Now, I want you to know that I have not got a really close relationship with this woman. All I can say is that I know her name, and we have a little riff that we were doing. On Tuesday, I went in, and I'm going to weep telling you the story because of where I was as an individual. I am totally exhausted physically, and I can't put my finger on why that is. So, if you can, pray for me. But this woman, as I was leaving, I told her to have a blessed day, and to hope everything goes well, stay safe, and all that. The normal baloney that you tell people, and to have a conversation. And she immediately opened up to me, and she said, "This is my last day. They've cut my hours to 8 hours. My husband's been fired from his job, and I don't really know what I'm going to do." I'm not kidding you. We're in line, right? And she's unloading on me. And so I said, "I am so sorry to hear that." And I began to just try to encourage her a little bit. This is 11 o'clock. And I'm saying, well, I said, hopefully I'll see you somewhere else here in town. Basically, good luck. Well, what I should have done. What I should have done was just stop right there and prayed for her. But I didn't. So if I see her again, I'm going to probably do that. However, this is what happened next. And I'll tell you, this is probably going to blow your socks off because it blew mine off, totally. You know that it's hard for me in a crowd to hear a lot of people's conversations, so be aware of that when I share this story with you. Because I'm talking about following the ancient past. So the benediction that I do on the end of Sunday services is basically something that's very old. It's been done for a long, long time. And a lot of people don't understand the concept because of the fact that being blessed and leaving your blessing, that's a really old theology that a lot of people don't understand. But I went to the bagel shop on Main Street where I'm doing some work for the owner at a condo he owns because it got trashed. And so I made a deal with him that he would make me bagel turkey sandwiches every day for lunch. And so when I come in, the girls, they say, the usual, two, or uno or dos? I said, dos. And so I came, as I got out of my truck and I walked across the front of the bagel shop, there's a couple chairs and tables out front. And at the one table was a guy, you could see that, this is so hard to fathom, about 6'4". My wife's brother, Jerry, he's a big guy, athletic, always wears a t-shirt and shorts and short socks and tennis shoes. Well, he was riding a motorcycle and it had a trailer on it, and he was burnt to a crisp. I mean, bright red, white guy, bright red, had the helmet mark where the helmet was right here at the bottom of his ears. And he and his companion, I assume his wife, I didn't know him. And I heard them talking. They said, "What's the weather like in San Diego?" And that's all I heard. And they were looking on GPS and all this. Next to them, in the table next to them, was a homeless man. I had never seen him before, the homeless guy. But what's really weird is I saw him again today. I'm just telling you, this is why this jogged my memory. So at 11 o'clock, I have this lady unload on me, and I blew it, and I didn't do what I should have done. And at 11:30, I'm sitting at the bagel shop waiting for my sandwiches to be done. I see this going on in front. All of a sudden, from through the front doors, this man, he's about in his 50s, very physically fit, looked just like my brother-in-law, no hair, just, clean shaved head. And he brings this homeless man in with him. And he says, "Would you like something to drink?" And the guy could hardly speak. And he said, "Hi, by the way, my name is David." And he says, and he gives him his name. I didn't hear him. I could not hear him. I heard him perfectly. He gets him something to eat, got him something to drink, some hot coffee. He went over and filled the coffee cup up, and then he took him over to my left, 2 tables down, and sat him. I'm sitting here watching this. And I said, without opening my mouth, in my head, I said, "Lord, bless him for doing that. Swear to you, I have not seen this guy ever in my whole life." I'm sitting at the end of the line at one of the chairs. This man comes up to me and grabs my hand and shakes it. And he didn't say his name, didn't say anything, but came down to my ear, because I couldn't have heard him if he would have said something. And he says to me this: "Someone needs to love on them, because maybe we'll be in that position someday." And I looked up at him and I said, "Be blessed, man." And he walked and took his wife or whoever was with him and his helmet, and they went over and parked themselves 3 doors down, 3 tables down. As God is my witness, I'm sitting there going, "What just happened? Why did he come and talk to me?" He didn't talk to anybody else in the shop. Nobody, except for this homeless guy. Came to me. I'm by myself. I'm just sitting there with my mouth shut, with my sunglasses on. You can't see my eyes. You don't know what I'm thinking. It's one of the reasons why I do that. And the girls say, "Hey, come get your sandwiches ready. Come get them." And so I come get them, and they put the drinks in a bag, and I turn, and I'm walking out the front door. He says this: "Have a great day, Mark." And I went, "What?" I said, "How does he know my name? How does he know my name?" I'm walking out of the place, and I couldn't stop crying because of the kindness that I saw him give to this homeless guy. It was unbelievable. I could sense it in my spirit. It was like genuine, absolute, total love towards this individual that he'd never known before. And then to say, "See you, Mark. Have a great day." I was shocked. And it didn't dawn on me until I got in my truck and I was driving back to the condo that I just had a visitation. Totally without any question, just like the one that I had in my office with the former pastor, Larry. And I thought to myself, holy cow. What I have been telling you to do by blessing and having it come back to you just happened to me. And I want to tell you what, it was more than I could handle. Now, saying all of that to say this, why would that happen at this time in this way? I don't know. All I know is that I was pretty low, and when I left, I know God hears me. He's trying to tell me everything's okay. I got it. I don't know about you, but I'll tell you what, it shocked the bazoo out of me. I don't know how to explain it any other way. That was probably one of the most amazing things that has happened to me in a long time. Now, other than what I experienced Sunday in our time together as we were taking, and Rabbi came to me afterwards as I was taking the prayer requests and waving them before God, saying, you need to read all these. So I was just kind of just saying, you need to deal with this stuff. And he mentioned to me, he said, oh man, he said, I just saw the priest and the wave offering, blah, blah, blah. And I'm kind of going, oh my gosh, didn't think of that. And anyway, so stuff's happening in a very rapid, and I have another announcement that I will probably share with you next week. Maybe by the weekend I can finalize it. Something that just happened to us as a body that is going to be very significant and very big, a big-time blessing for our body. But anyway, what we want to talk about tonight, I know this is probably going to be hard to do after messing everything up in my time frame. I want to share with you discovering or asking for the ancient paths. I want you to see this in a new way. Maybe you haven't thought of this before. And the only thing that came to my mind when I was thinking about it is that I was privileged to be part of a building project in Northern California in which a guy did not use power tools to build with. Now, you say, what do you mean? In other words, drilling his holes and doing what he did not do with power tools. He did it by hand. And the old school way. He actually was trained and grew up in Norway. And so what had happened is that they had built this big A-frame house, and I mean big, probably as big as the inside of our church body, about 35 feet to the peak, 40 feet to the peak. And he was bringing in these beams, I mean beams, these monster beams, and he was lining the inside of the building with these beams every 8 feet, self-supporting, and then he was putting them together in what they call a mortised opening with these beams. I'm talking about a beam. And then he would drive a dowel through them on the side, and it would go through, and he would cut it off and sand it flush. I want to tell you, you've never seen anything like this unless you saw this up front. Now, what I'm saying is this, is that the people wanted a Dutch look inside their house, and boy, did they get it. It was an amazing display of craftsmanship that I dare say that I don't think I know, but maybe two people in my lifetime that would be able to achieve that. This guy was one. And so I was shocked. These are the old ways. These are the ways things used to be done. And people don't understand that concept because of the fact that they have in their head, I'm going to have it my way and as fast as I can. That's why you go to In-N-Out and spend an hour in line, which makes no sense to me, to get a hamburger that takes 3 minutes to make. I'm just saying. So here's all of the things that I'm trying to bring to. The ancient paths make sense if you use them in the right way and understand what the ancient paths look like. So let's take a look at Jeremiah 6:16. This is where we're going to start tonight, and I'm going to hopefully get through the first two sessions of this because I want to get to identity. I want you to understand who you are in God. Well, how does this thing work? God is reaffirming in my life, especially after what I saw, because I give you a benediction, and God basically told me on the way from the bagel shop to the condo that this is what I'm going to do in you, is I'm going to show you the ways that work. Stop trying to do the things that don't. And it shocked me when he basically revealed that to me. So Jeremiah 6:16 says this. Thus saith the Lord, stand by the ways and see and ask for the ancient paths, where the good way is, and walk in it. And you will find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk in it. That's a NASB. What is an ancient ways defined, and what does that look like? Rabbi, would you grab a couple of Kleenex for me? I can't really get down and do that without messing everything up. And here's something interesting. It says, the ancient Hebrew word for old or hidden past, thank you so much, hidden past is olam, O-L-A-M. Now, what does it really mean? It means old, concealed, hidden, perpetual, eternal, timeless, and from eternity. That's out of the Strong's. Now, look at the words from eternity. From eternity. Ancient past from eternity. In other words, it's part of what God had set in place. Forgive me for just a second here. You know you're not supposed to do that on TV, but I just did, so get over it. This is something I thought was really interesting. It says, everything on the earth is patterned after the things in heaven. I want you to get this. This is very important. Everything. From eternity, the things on earth are really just types and shadows of the things from heaven. In other words, everything that's happened in heaven is being repeated down here. We see it in it, but within a different light. Now, all of the things that we do has something to do with what's already been done. Thus, nothing's new under the sun. Nothing's new. Everybody thinks there is, but it's not. When God created man on earth, he always established and he walked in them or walked with them. So what Adam and Eve were doing was simply following orders, doing what God told them to do. Now here's the other thought. God's ways are heavenly, eternal, and timeless. In other words, everything that God has done has already gone down this road, and there's consequences for everything we do. We read it, but we don't believe it. You reap what you sow. So you sow and you reap. It's a process. It's not a saying, it's a principle. So in other words, it actually happens. Follow me now. When God created man on the earth, it was established and he walked with them. When he made Adam and Eve, he made them in their own image, established with them his ways. This is killer. This is really interesting. Supernatural, timeless, and from eternity. Now, these ways of speaking, ways of behaving, relating to one another. They had to learn all that on their own. Think about it for a moment. They were the first. They didn't know any better, one way or the other. But here's the key. Look at what it says. Since man chose sin, he departed the Father, and the Father from his ways. In other words, he took leave of absence, if you will, and started following and doing his own thing. Didn't work out that way. Today, we don't even recognize what these ways are anymore. Thus, why I say, dealing with the ancient past. To return to them, if we wanted to do so, it would be very hard for us to do because many of us don't know how to get there. We don't know what they look like, right? So here's the thought. Now, God instructs us through the prophet Jeremiah to see and ask for the ancient paths again. In other words, I'm going to ask God for the best way to do this. Are you hearing me? Not the way I'm going to do it. I didn't say that. Best way he wants me to do it. You see, this is the difference between in worship, where we talked about Sunday, that in our prayer time, giving of ourselves to him as an act of worship or sacrifice. I don't think we can wrap our head about that. Now, good way. Now, he tells us to go find the good way. The Hebrew word for good used here is tov. I believe that's pronounced, Rabbi can correct me, T-O-V, meaning pleasant, agreeable, happy. Look at this. Well off, prosperous, great, excellent, cheerful, merry, distinguished. Such characteristics are the result of walking in the ancient paths of God. This is out of Strong's. Now follow with me now. Such characteristics are the result of walking in these paths consistently every day. The scripture passage further says that you will walk in these paths and you will find rest and peace for your soul. How many people do you know that are incredibly disheveled today? They don't know what to do. They're freaking out about everything. I mean, literally. I mean, people that you would think are rock solid are just totally losing it. And I can't understand the reason for that, because if God is still sovereign and still God, what I'm hearing on the TV and the other stuff that is causing us to be so disheveled, we should be dismissing, not bringing it into our paths. Now, so many people have very little rest or peace on the inside. Life is a constant struggle, and there is a continual torment on the inside of many. I would agree with that. So would you, I'm sure. God never intended for us to live this way. This state of being is not walking in the ancient paths. In other words, doing the things that God has already done and proven to work. We seem to think that there's always a better way. As my father would tell me, the grass is always greener on the other side. Well, unfortunately, he followed that. Took him until he was in his late 50s, early 60s, to finally figure out that hop and ship and doing other stuff is just not a good thing. Now, the state of being is from not walking in those paths. But when God created man and placed him on the earth, he made him in his own image and programmed him in his own ways. So what messed that up? Sin. That's how that worked. Now, since that time, man departed from farther and farther from the original ways of God. And this is why I say, how do we know that? Here's a great example. Follow with me. Even after sin entered the world, man still lived for 900 years, Adam in particular. Noah, 600 years. But follow with me, 900, 600, Moses, 120. 900, 600, 120. Today, you're lucky if you live up over 80. Think about it. Now, the farther away from the original ways of God man has departed, the shorter the lifespan is. And the more complicated he has made it. I'm going to give you some examples, practical, real-world examples that are going to blow your mind, but it's so true. I've seen it in action, in particular, this particular example, the physical principle of supernatural power jump. Supernatural power jump. Now, everyone knows when you see these high-tension lines, the ones with the big A-frame towers and these big, heavy lines, some of the wires, it's hard to believe that they're about this big in diameter. To be able to put these two pieces together, they have a machine that has a hollow core that they put the wires into, and then this machine hydraulically puts these two together with compression, little spots all around it. And when they do, it's like 15 or 18,000 pounds of pressure. And once they're joined together and they become one, they cannot be separated at that point. They can break on each end, but they cannot break in that center part. Now, everyone knows about that, and that there's a high voltage running through that. You'd be a lunatic to try to touch it because it would kill you. It would fry you to a crisp. But listen to this. One of the most interesting things about high-tension wires is that if I take a wire, it doesn't matter what size, it can be very small or it can be very large, and I run it parallel to that same wire, in other words, not touching each other, the electricity, or if you would I'll call it the aura, of the electricity will transfer itself into that other wire and energize it. Serious. This is the principle in which God uses His Holy Spirit. But now let me take it a step further and give you an example. I watched guys that would get in a bosun's chair, which is a little chair with wheels, and they would put themselves on these high wires to inspect them. A man in a basket hanging from a 100,000 volt wire, and he would shimmy down these dudes, and he would go down to the insulators, which are about 4.5 feet long, that hold the wire at the bottom, and he would jump over that and go down the other next line. How did he get there? He got there by a helicopter coming alongside of these power lines, and they would take about a 14 or 16 foot pole, and they would let it arc to the pole and energize the helicopter. I'm not kidding you. I can't believe these people have got a brain in their head. I'm just saying. And they would energize the helicopter, and then they would get close enough, and he would actually go from the helicopter and jump into the boat, put the bosun's chair on the wire, get in it, and then they would take the rod off of that, a big arc of electricity off of it, and the helicopter would go away and just follow him as he would go down and clean, clean the insulators and do what he was doing all the way for miles and miles and miles and miles. Wow. Even the electrical power jumps across free air to a parallel wire. So God's supernatural power in someone's life can jump from him to you when your ways are lined up in parallel with him. Isn't that exciting? So when you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, God supernaturally visits you. Remember what I talked about? Visitation to habitation. When God starts living in you, this becomes a reality. Now, when God's ways are established within any culture, doesn't matter, any given culture, there is no need for specific intellectual knowledge of these things because they just start happening. That is what happened in America in 1776 when we became a country and became our own government, because it was based in godly principles, of which our government today is trying to destroy. The government is trying to get God out of America. And let me tell you what, it will not succeed and it will not come to a good end for them, because God is jealous God. He doesn't let us go. Follow me now. Now, however, when God's ways are systematically eliminated from a given culture, as Hosea 4:6 says, the people perish for the lack of such knowledge. In North American culture, over the last several generations, people have decided that we don't have to think, behave, or do things that way anymore. And that's what, honestly, don't know what that way is, because they are attacking everything. The family, everything that they can. And what are we happening? All kinds of crazy stuff is going on. But let me take you to another piece of scripture, Jeremiah chapter 6, 13 through 16. Let me read it to you. For from the least of them, even to the greatest of them, everyone is greedy for gain. And from the prophet even to the priest, everyone deals falsely. They have healed the brokenness of my people superficially. Now, what am I using? NASB. This is a New American Standard Bible. It says, they have healed the brokenness of my people superficially, saying, peace, peace, but there is no peace. Were they ashamed because of the abomination they have done? They were not even ashamed at all. They did not even know how to blush, he says. Therefore they shall fall among those who fall. At the time that I punish them, they shall be cast down, says the Lord. Thus saith the Lord, stand by the ways and see and ask for the ancient paths. In other words, get back to where you were. Goes on. Where the good way is, and walk in it, and you will find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not walk in it. Because we have not walked in God's ancient paths, many areas of our society, as well as personally and family life, seem almost being overwhelmed on a daily basis. And I have to say, that was one of the reasons why Tuesday I felt so low, is because I saw and see what's happening to America and watching it be destroyed from top down. Some even churches are doing the same. Consequently, important spiritual, emotional, and financial, family, and health needs seem to go unmet day after day. One of the reasons why I instituted what we are doing on Sundays from now on, with requests being brought to the front and being prayed for by the body of Christ, all of us, I believe that that is the change, or the, if you will, the paradigm, the place, the paradigm, where it actually is changing the focus back to where it should be. In other words, calling on the name of the Lord and doing it in a way that's substantial and real, and I believe God's going to meet those needs in a fantastic, amazing way. I have to believe that, because Tuesday, my need that was unsaid but spoken internally was met by that amazing kindness that I saw. Basically what he was saying, there's hope for America, Mark. Pastor Mark, there's hope for America when you see that happening in real life. Wow, that just was powerful to me. Now, because we have not walked in God's ancient paths, many of our areas of culture, as well as personal and family life, has been just being decimated. Consequently, important spiritual, emotional, financial, family stuff needs to be dealt with. So as a result of verse 13, which I just gave you, that they just basically blew it off, they just said, no, I'm not going to do that, became very self-focused and greedy for gain. This is exactly what we see happening. You can tell me whatever you want and you can believe whatever you want, but I believe that our president and his family are greedy and they're mobsters. And what they're doing is they're making America just like them. And it's got to stop. And the only way that that can happen is have God get involved. And I believe that he's going to do that. It's impossible to tell a drowning man not to be greedy for air, or a starving man not to steal for food. It's impossible to do that. And that's exactly what we see happening. Greed and deceit are bound in the heart of man, and stuff is going on. Verse 14 states that we're not helping people when, I want you to hear this. This is probably going to be hurtful to some of you in how I'm bringing this across, but I want you to get this. Listen carefully what I'm saying. Verse 14 states that we're not helping people when we, the church, attempt to bring healing to the brokenness of people in a superficial way. In other words, pat them on the back, give them a bag of groceries, and there's an old saying, I can't remember where it came from. He says, is it better to give a guy a fish or teach a man to fish? Think about it for a minute. Is it better? Now, don't get me wrong. I think that there's a need to do what we're trying to do here, especially at the Lighthouse. But perhaps we've thought that we were helping people through speaking peace, and thus attempting to remove their guilt and pain without dealing with the root causes of the problem. It's called sin. It's called disobedience. People are interested in instant solutions to problems. That's why you can go to Burger King and have it your way, not just the way it comes. Follow? Think about it. As a result, many times you go through life daily making choices aimed at just eliminating the painful consequences of our last foolish mistake. Now, why do I say that? Because I see this happening with so many people within the body of Christ. They go to their doctor, say, I don't feel good, or I feel moody, and they give you something for that, a pill. Sometimes you have to wonder, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Is it masking something, or do we need to have a deliverance? Follow? So think about that. Now, short-term fixes are always the seed of long-term destruction. Let me say that again. Excuse me. Here's a thought. Let me use this illustration and see what you have. Suppose a teenage girl has been deeply wounded by alienation from her father, enters into rebellion, and cuts off the relationship with him, okay? Doesn't happen, right? Nobody's ever seen that happen. She now stepped outside the circle of spiritual protection, which God designed in the family that she was living with, and that was her safety belt, okay? Having been deeply wounded or hurt by her father, the young girl now goes in search for love. So what happens? She meets some young guy, she thinking that's where she's going to get what loves that she's looking for. And because of the hurt of her life, she allows herself to become sexually involved with this him, resulting in an unwanted pregnancy. Unfortunately, her second foolish short-term choice of sexual satisfaction was the result of a long-term consequence. She had an abortion. This action resulted in a long-term consequence of untold guilt, shame, having taken someone's life, of who she never met. Now, the torment and the hurt of the situation then starts her through a quest, again, of looking for comfort and love. Another romantic relationship is entered, and again, an unwanted pregnancy occurs. However, still carrying the torment of the last nonsense, or last bad choice, she goes ahead and has the child. Forces this guy to be her husband, unbeknownst to her that this guy has an anger problem. And he's not a good guy at all. And he beats her. So another short-term solution with a long-term consequence. Finally, carrying all of this hurt and all of the things going on, she cannot deal with the fact that she's being beat, divorces this man, now has a child that she's caring for, and still having all of these interesting things happening in her life because of making some very bad choices. Now, in verse 15 of Jeremiah 6, tells us that when we make short-sighted choices attempting to bring peace without dealing with the root of the former wrong choices, we harden our own hearts and are not even convicted of any wrongdoing. In other words, they cycle into this thing that I call where we find young ladies like this going into multiple relationships, having multiple children, thinking this is going to solve everything, and all it does is create bigger problems. The hardening of the heart then becomes a very cause for their own downfall and their own destruction. Now, Jeremiah in verse 16 urges us to seek after the ancient paths where the good way is found. Here's another illustration. Follow with me now. Chapter 18 of Jeremiah, verses 12 through 15. But they will say, it is hopeless, for we're going to follow our own plans, and each of us will act according to the stubbornness of his evil heart. Therefore, thus says the Lord, ask now among the nations, whoever heard the like of this. The Virgin of Israel has done a most appalling thing. Does the snow of Lebanon forsake the rock of the open country, or is it the cold flowing water from the foreign land ever snatched away? For my people have forgotten me. They burn incense to worthless gods, and they have stumbled from their ways, from the ancient paths, to walk in the bypath, not on the highway. So I'm going to give you a really interesting analogy. The Mercedes-Benz versus the machete. Huh? In verse 15, the prophet tells us when we don't walk in God's ancient paths, we are walking in bypass. Can you picture this? You're in a thick jungle. The only way that you can get through the thick jungle is a machete, big long knife, 3 inches wide, very sharp, and you're hacking away and doing what you're doing. Think about this for a moment. To get to point A, from point A to point B, you have to beat yourself through the jungle. Well, on the other hand, that if we go to the ancient paths, it's like a superhighway. So I can get in my Mercedes, get on the path, and start driving, and I can go further in one day than this man who's in the jungle doing it his way can get in a lifetime. Think about it for a moment. So if I do what God tells me to do, instead of what man tells me to do, I'm further ahead. In other words, I win, the enemy loses. Now, the man with the Mercedes is able to reach in one day the same goal. Daniel 11:32 says this, but the people who know their God will be strong and do exploits. What's an exploit? An act or deed, especially a brilliant or heroic one. Wow. And I'm not in the New Testament yet. Most of us have not had any time to do exploits because we're caught up in survival mode because of poor choices. It's just kind of how it works. Then, and what's necessary to set the course in the lives of Christian young people as a result of serving Jesus all the days of their lives means that we need to do something about changing our course. In other words, follow the old ways. I'm not going to reinvent the wheel. Robert Schuller told me something one time when I was down at his church in Garden Grove before he passed away. I'm talking 30 years ago, maybe 40 now. And he said to me, because I asked him, I said, why are you doing this thing? I forget what it was. He was feeding somebody or doing something to a particular ethnic group. And I don't want to be called racist, so I won't tell you what ethnic group it was. But anyway, he was doing this feeding, and he said this, which I thought was, and it's been in my mind forever since he said it to me. He said this. He said, don't reinvent the wheel. If no one is doing it, do it better than anyone has ever thought of doing it. However, if someone is doing it, come alongside of them and help them do it better than they've ever done before. And I went, brilliant. In other words, I don't have to take credit for something that's already been put in place. It just blows my mind. And I said, good deal. I said, that's perfect. I said, I understand that. So what we're seeing here in the necessity of people's lives, we need to do something in the crucial times of life about going and making good decisions based on good information that comes from the Lord himself. How do we do that? By knowing your word. This is why everything that I talked about at the beginning and the illustration that I used and the example that I used, real life thing that just happened a day ago, I'm telling you that you need to not think about trying to reinvent the wheel. Do what God tells you to do, and it will make your path. See, all of a sudden, all of these scriptures make sense to me. And he will make your paths straight, not crooked, straight, which means that I'm making good choices based on what the Word says instead of what I've been told by all of those people that think they know, and the fact is they know nothing. Nothing is better than going and talking to someone who's been down the road of life, that has seen the events and knows how to circumvent them. In every culture, God establishes his ancient ways of instilling these key qualities in important times of our lives in the children of God. However, in our culture today, here in North America, we have forsaken and forgotten God's ancient ways as a result. And we've failed to receive in our own lives or to impart them to our children because our children are not in our homes anymore. Because when you go into the impoverished areas of any city, you'll find that 70 to 80% have no father in the home teaching these young people how to live life. And thus, what do we have? We have them doing their own thing because that's what everybody else on the outside is telling them. This is why we have crime as bad as we do. This is why we have so many children that are being born to single moms. It's baloney. They need to take responsibility. You need to call sin, sin, and you need to deal with it the way it needs to be dealt with, the way God says to do it. Now, these two keys to making this happen is called identity and destiny. Identity and destiny. I'm going to leave you with this. I want you to think about it until we come together next week. Whether we realize it or not, every day, every one of us answers two critical questions. Every day. Every single day. I was sitting in the bagel shop. I was asking myself these same questions. When I reacted to the lady, I've asked the same questions. Listen to what they are. Answer these questions. Who am I? Who am I? And where am I going? Who am I? And where am I going? When we answer these questions based on pre-existing images already established deep inside of us, we will probably fail the test and answer incorrectly. Who am I? Pertains to what we will call identity. Identity is your perception of you. Do you have value? Does identity have value? Do you have value? Do you feel valuable? If you don't, next week is for you. Next week is for you. However, we have run out of time. I am 30 seconds away from having to say goodnight. I just think it's important that we take a look at what God is doing, deal with what's happening in front of us. There's so many things that are messed up out there. There's no reason for any of us to think for 1 minute that there's a brand new thing going on down the road. Apply yourself where you're at. Do what you need to do to make things right and discover the ancient paths. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May his light shine upon you. In every way, everywhere that you go, pray a blessing upon the place that you enter. Don't leave without leaving your blessing there. I want to tell you what. My life changed a little bit this Tuesday. And I'm believing that God is going to continue to change it through people like you and people like our body that are ministering one to another as the people of God. May God bless you. We'll see you next week from Lighthouse Living Room. This is your pastor, Pastor Mark. You ever have a question, you have something you want to talk about, you know how to get in touch with us. Just go to lighthouselife, life.org. Go to the website and send that information. Or if you've already got my wife's text her. Believe me, she'll give it to me. May God bless you. See you next week.